Hello and welcome to Mansion Interviews, a podcast which gives me an excuse to talk to interesting people while at the same time improving your English. Today we're speaking with the lovely Nick Burmester from the expat podcast Happy Life Move, which you can find at happylifemove.com. On her podcast, Nick interviews people who've changed countries, like me and Nick, to find a better and happier life. Nick is originally from Germany and now she lives in Brighton on the south coast of England. There are a few seconds of bad audio at the beginning of our chat and I apologise for that. We were having some problems with Skype, but it gets better, so please don't stop listening. Keep going, and I'm sure you'll enjoy the conversation. Remember, you can improve your listening with comprehension questions and find some help with difficult words from this interview at inglespodcast.com/Nick, N-I-C. So, Nick, you've lived in Austria in the past, and you've also lived in Germany and the UK. Can you tell the listeners where you grew up and also what your childhood smelt like?
I've never thought about what my childhood smelled like, so I suppose there will be different smells, not just one. I grew up in the north of Germany in a city called Bremen. It's a port city, so we have a big river. And because I played a lot outside as a child, I would say my childhood definitely smelled of agriculture.
So you didn't grow up in a city or a large town. You grew up in a rural area in the countryside?
Yeah, a bit of both, really. So it was a city, but it was very easy to get out. Just a couple of minutes, so we would just play in the fields, and there were train tracks where we used to hang out. So today I'm sure no parent would want their children to hang out near train tracks, but a few years ago when I was young it was just all right. And yeah, the other smells are rather personal. I'm not sure if it makes sense, such as biscuits around Christmas, or we always had dogs, so wet dogs, wet dog smell. That's
biscuits and wet dogs. Was your mother a cook? Did she do a lot of home cooking?
She did a lot of home cooking, and yeah, I shouldn't be saying this. She maybe wasn't the best cook in the world, bless her.
That's okay. Neither is mine, so we've got that in common. My mother's a terrible cook.
I've been a vegetarian for most of my life, for 30 years actually, and people kept saying, "Oh, your mother must be a bad cook," because I told them I didn't like the taste of meat. Which I know is almost a sacrilege, saying it to somebody who's living in Spain, because as far as I understand, meat and fish are quite important to Spanish dishes, are they not?
That's right. They are, yes. So now you're living in the UK. Did you move to the UK from Germany or from Austria?
Both.
Both.
The first time round, I moved from Germany while I was studying English. So I had to do a semester abroad. That's why I went to Portsmouth. That was our partner university. And the second time I came from Austria, which was last year in March. And that didn't have to do anything with studying, just with me wanting to go back after having spent 12 years in Austria. Right.
So when I met you in Manchester in September, you'd only been living in the UK permanently then for, I don't know, 5 or 6 months?
Yes, I did.
Right. Okay. I didn't know that. And when you made the transition to live permanently in the UK, because now you're in Brighton, what was it like, because you're working in English, what was it like to make the transition to an English-speaking country and work in English, in a language that isn't your mother tongue?
I would say for me it was relatively easy. First of all, because in 2000 I had already done this. So I knew what it was like to go into the UK, to get used to the work ethic, how people treat each other, how they talk, the language itself. Also, of course, it was easy for me because I have been studying English since I was 12. So that's a long, long, long time to get used to different kinds of things and to build your vocabulary. What was the second part of your question? Sorry.
That was it. Just what I was wondering how it was to sort of start working in a language that isn't your mother tongue, but you've pretty much answered it. But what's interesting in your answer, Nick, is that you said you've been learning English since you were 12. So of course you had a high level, but many Spanish people have been learning since they were 5 or 6, and their level isn't nearly as high as yours. So apart from obviously living in an English speaking country, how would you explain that your English is at such a high level? Do you think you did anything special to get your English up there so proficient?
Oh, golly. I wasn't expecting to justify myself. No, I'm joking, of course. Well, I can probably say, and this is the typical German arrogance for you, I'm fairly talented at languages to begin with. I do pick it up fairly quickly. I mean, I still have a German accent, of course. I may never get rid of it, but I do like languages a lot. And I have immersed myself quite a lot as well from quite an early age. I've been reading English books, listening to English lyrics, trying to translate them for myself. Also, there is a lot of English in our day-to-day life, and it has become more and more. I think it's much easier now if you go online, or if, in Germany, if you watch TV, there's a lot of English on there. Adverts have English slogans. I can't really imagine this kind of level of English in other countries, barring Scandinavia, for example.
Yeah, so pretty much English is wherever you look, on the TV, on the radio. So you don't have to go and look for it; it's there in front of you all the time.
It is quite there, and I think the difference for me was really that I was so interested that I just kept reading a lot and watching films in the original language instead of the dubbed version. And the final push, I would say, was really for me when I went to the UK, to Portsmouth, and apart from studying, I took a job in Boots. So I had a day-to-day vocabulary that I would never have gotten at university.
Could you explain what Boots is for anyone who doesn't know?
Of course, Boots is a
not something you wear on your feet.
No. I do apologize for that. No, Boots, the chemist, is the official name. So they have pharmacies, opticians, and they sell a lot of toiletries and some electrical goods. So if you want to buy your makeup, your tissues, your shampoo, all kinds of things, this is what you can find at Boots.
Did you say you worked there for a while?
I did. I worked there for a whole year. I started as a Christmas temp, which is a lovely way to get into a job, and then I was kept on full time.
So when you moved to the UK, to Portsmouth, and after to Brighton, the language wasn't a big problem for you. But looking back, what would you say has been the most difficult thing for you about making a life in the UK?
The first time around in Portsmouth, it was definitely networking. I was not as aware of how to network then, even though it was easier because I was a student. So it's always easier at university to find other people your age with the similar interests. But I was quite alone a lot of the time, and that was really difficult. I did learn how to cope with that, so that my other moves to Austria and back to here were completely different. But that was the biggest challenge I faced.
Can you give any advice to somebody who does move to another country by themselves, how they would meet people and try to create a social life for themselves?
Definitely. Throw yourself out there. Commit to never saying no if anybody invites you, even though you may not fancy whatever they're suggesting. Go with the flow. Also, try to find maybe a sports group you can join. Go to the library and see if they put on any events. Many of these are for free, so it doesn't have to cost any money. What else? Well, go on to meetup.com and find something in the city you're moving to. Couchsurfing is a fantastic network to meet people, and Internations also a very good network to meet people in a new town.
That's very good advice. I'll make sure I put the links to those websites in the show notes, which will be at inglespodcast.com/Nick, N-I-C. Nick, so you chose to live in two English cities by the sea, and now you're in Brighton. How would you describe Brighton, where you are now, to someone who's never been there? Could you paint a picture for us?
I can try. Well, as you mentioned, it is by the sea, so you have a beach, no sand, unfortunately. It's just pebble stones, but it's all right. You have a couple of palm trees, a lovely pier. Brighton is a very vibrant city. There's a lot of international students, language students. There is a very lively art scene here. And it is quite busy. It's a city of about, I'd say, 150,000 people. And it's just 1 hour from London, so you get a lot of money being spent here as well, which always the infrastructure and other things really, really benefit from that. And also, some people may not know this, Brighton is somewhat of a gay capital, so this gives it an extra interesting flair, I would say.
I didn't know that. I didn't know it was a gay capital.
Well, it is just it's just fairly obvious. There's a lot of events and places you can go, and it makes Brighton a very tolerant and nice place to live.
Okay, so I know, or I'm guessing that despite living in Austria and Germany, you're not very keen on drinking beer. So you walk into a pub in Brighton, you walk up to the bar. What do you order?
I would order a Diet Coke. I know that's terribly boring. I don't normally drink. I haven't really got the palate to appreciate wine or even beer. However, having said that, if it is really hot in summer, I may actually order half a shandy. So you will ask me what a shandy is. I can explain. A shandy is beer mixed with lemonade, and it may sound disgusting to some of your audience, but it is a really, really refreshing drink.
No, it's quite popular in Spain. In Spanish, it's una clara, which is quite popular when it's hot over here.
I've learned new things. Thank you.
So you've been working for a while as a recruiter for a cosmetic company. So a recruiter is a person who looks for employees to bring in to the staff of a company. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So what would you say, based on your experience, what would you say to a Spanish speaker listening to us who has a fairly high level of English, who's looking for a job in your field of cosmetics? What kind of person would you be looking for to employ?
I would be looking for somebody who is passionate about hair and beauty, because that's really, really helpful. Although generally, of course, there are a lot of transferable skills. So skills that you may have acquired in a different position, but that you can still use, such as customer service or management skills or communication skills. So all of these I would be looking for.
And I think you've said in another interview that personality, in your opinion, is more important than a person's skills or their experience, which I was surprised to hear, especially because in Spain there's a huge emphasis on the person's CV, on their qualifications, on the companies that they've worked for in the past. Could you explain why you think that?
Well, my experience is that the personality is you either have it or you don't. It's the idea of the so-called cultural fit for a company. If I meet somebody who is passionate, who has who has a bit of experience in management, but maybe not in customer service, or maybe has never worked in hair and beauty, as long as they have the drive I'm looking for, the motivation, as long as they have a very good understanding of how to treat customers, if they're willing to learn, if they're friendly, even bubbly, all these things, if they have that, that's so much more important to me, because to a certain level, skills you can learn, but personality you can't really learn. Having said that, of course, a CV is important because a CV gets you through the door. So yes, we look at qualifications, or I do. And yes, I do look at experience, but only to a certain level. I'm willing to make allowances for people who are not 100% fit for the role that I'm currently recruiting for.
That's very encouraging for Spanish people who maybe do not have a strong CV or a lot of work experience. That you say that. Is there any other advice that you would offer a Spanish person who maybe is looking to work abroad, particularly in the UK?
I would say yes. Try to get your English to as high a level as you can, because it will always give you an edge over other people. But also, networking is much, much more important than trying to find a job online, because only a little percentage, only a small percentage of the jobs that are free will actually be advertised online. You can find out much more and be much more successful if you go to a place and start networking, talking to people, and ask jobs.
How can somebody do that? Go to conferences or seminars, or?
I would say anywhere. I mean, the things that I mentioned earlier about how to network, that's basically it. Of course, you can look at in the UK, there's the Chamber of Commerce. They do weekly breakfast, monthly breakfasts. You can join these and network. But I would say any kind of network, even if you go down the pub and start talking to the locals, might actually end up in finding a job. You never know.
Right. That's good advice. Thank you. Moving on, I'd like to ask you, Nick, if it's okay, a few quick fire hot seat questions and put you on the spot.
Yes.
But please feel free to answer as short or as lengthy as you prefer.
Okay.
So, have you ever been to Spain?
Oh, I was so hoping you would not ask me this question.
You haven't.
I haven't. And the big shame here is I've actually been studying Spanish for 2 years at university, but I've never been. I do apologize.
Well, you're very welcome to come and stay with us. We have a sofa bed for you. So if you'd like to couch surf in Valencia, just get in touch, and you're more than welcome.
I might take you up on that.
With pleasure. What's your favorite Spanish dish?
That would be paella. How could it not?
Dogs or cats? And why?
Absolutely dogs all the way. I grew up with dogs, so that's probably why. But also, I just find dogs much more personable and interactive. Cats, I don't know, cats, they pass you by, if they don't want to cuddle with you or connect with you, then they just won't. But dogs give you so much more. They will always want to, be part of your life, as it were. It's a much, much more intense connection I have with dogs than I could ever have with cats.
I'm totally with you on that. So absolutely, 100%. What one thing, Nick, if you were to tell someone about yourself, would they find it difficult to believe? Surprise me.
Oh, okay. The only thing I can think of is that I have lived in England before in 2 different lifetimes. And that probably explains why I've always had this yearning to go back to the UK. I went to a medium once in Austria and asked her about my past lives.
What's a medium?
A medium is a person who can connect to the spiritual world, or to anything you don't believe in or anything you can't see, really.
Right. Okay.
So
So this medium told you that in a past life you had lived in the UK.
she did, and actually, she told me about two different lives at two different times. So one may have been about 1,000 years ago, somewhere in Cornwall, where I was working. No, I was actually somehow the overseer of a market space and had people pay me in kind so that they could sell their wares on this market, on this little market. And the second one was in Scotland, where I was living in the basement of a castle, and doing, it's a bit like a witch, really, cooking all kinds of potions. I don't know how to explain potion, really. You will have to. Yeah, so that was a long time ago, but it completely explains why I have this connection to England that I've never had with any other country.
And when this medium told you this, had you been to the UK, or was this happen before you went to Portsmouth for the first time?
No, I went to see her in Austria, so I had already been to the UK and gone back, but I hadn't told her any of that. I just, when the second live she talked about, she said, "Oh, what is it with you and this island?"
Another question for you. Which famous person or people, dead or alive, would you like to have at a dinner party?
Oh, there are quite a few, but if you're putting me on the spot and you want me to answer immediately, I would say, and this is probably difficult for people who are listening, but it's going to be the cast of Are You Being Served?
Really?
Yes.
I think, there Are You Being Served? I remember, but that's going back a few years. That's a British sitcom, a situation comedy from the 70s?
70s, but it went on for 10 seasons, went into the 80s. And yes, I love the sense of humor. I love how they all shaped their characters. And if you want to put a link in the show notes, perhaps, because it's British, it's the British sense of humor as well. So it's actually cultural knowledge.
I will, for sure. And I'm sure there are some videos on YouTube of Mrs. Slocum and Captain Peacock and all the lovely characters. Now Are You Being Served? That's taking me back a few years. What is Happy Life Move and why did you start it?
A Happy Life Move is my podcast, and it is for people who are living abroad, anywhere where they weren't born. My idea is to motivate other people to have the courage to go abroad, no matter how long, even just for a couple of months, because I personally think that it's an amazing experience if you do. You learn loads about yourself, about your own country, about other countries, cultures, mindsets. It just opens up everything.
And I believe that you're looking for potential guests for the show. So if anyone's listening and they'd like to be on the show, how could they get in touch with you?
Oh, thank you very much for mentioning that. Yes, I am always looking for people who want to talk about their experience abroad. I have a website called happylifemove.com. So there is an about page and there's a contact page where you can just send me an email. You can also email me directly if you want. My email address is nick@happylifemove.com. And if you look for me on Facebook, you can find me there as well. So...
Okay, that's great. And of course, all of those contact details will be in the show notes at inglespodcast.com/Nick. Nick, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. And I hope we can do this again in the future some point.
We will definitely. Thank you very much for having me. It was really fantastic. And congratulations on having published 86 episodes so far.
Thank you. I wish I had so many interviews, but I'm working on it.
I'm sure you'll get there. Let's spread the word, shall we?
We shall. Take care then, and thanks a lot.
All right.
Always a pleasure to chat to Nick, and I hope we can have her back on Mansion Interviews in the near future. You can check out Nick's website at happylifemove.com. That's happylifemove, todo junto, .com. And thank you for listening to this Mansion interview. You can find more podcasts to improve your English at inglespodcast.com. And you can study English free at mansioningles.com.